common example I give is a potato cake or fish cake recipe. And in the same way, that's what olive oil tends to do. It tends to bind the wax together to make it a bit firmer. So when I do vacuum it, it comes out in large chunks. Otherwise, when it's soft, mushy and glutinous as it was, it comes out in little bits. It can block the inside of the suction probe, so it's a bit of a nightmare. So we are making good progress, but this plug of wax and skin is directly embedded onto the eardrum, and you'll see that in a moment. You may just start seeing the eardrum appearing on the right hand side, just near the, there we are. So around 2 o'clock, that's the patient's eardrums. This plug is well and truly impacted. It just blocked my suction probe there. That's why I was giving it a little wriggle in the ear. And you can see there's a higher concentration of dead skin. You can actually see the skin, sheets of skin within the wax. Just there on the right to the sucker, that's a sheet of skin. And dead skin can, once it's dyed and wilted, and if it's macerated, it can become very sticky, almost like caramel and fudge. We can see half the eardrum, but as mentioned, it is impacted on the drum. The eardrum is very narrow on this side as well. It's what we call hyperflaccid. I myself have got hyperflaccid eardrums. It doesn't impact my hearing, but I do feel my eardrums vibrate and respond in sudden changes of altitude, probably more so than the normal person would. And when I'm going through tunnels, I can feel the air pressure change within my ears. And that's because my eardrums are very, very thin, and they're hyperflaccid, they're hypermobile. Normally that's caused by a thinning of the eardrum, or just a naturally thin eardrum. So not a thinning, but you're born with so it's congenital, you're born with a thin eardrum. It can sometimes be acquired. So for example, if you've had a perforation of the eardrum, when you have a perforation of the eardrum, all 3 layers, membranes of the eardrums, have a hole through it. And when the eardrum heals, normally it's just the outer layer, so the outer layer of skin that lines the ear canal it forms the outer layer of the eardrum, the epithelial epidermis layer, and the innermost membrane, the mucosa, that lines the middle ear. Those 2 layers heal, but the middle layer, the fibrous layer, doesn't. So it can create a thinning in that region where you had a perforation, and that can cause the eardrum to be hypermobile. Another reason why people can experience hypermobile eardrums is if the 3 ossicles, so the 3 middle ear bones, the hammer, anvil and stirrup, also known as the malleus, anvil and incus, they are all connected, and when the sound hits the eardrum, the vibrations are transmitted through the 3 bones like a lever system, and the last bone, the stapes bone, is connected to the organ of hearing, the cochlea, at a region called the oval window. And when the stapes bone moves backwards and forwards, it sets off waves of fluid within the organ of hearing, the cochlea, which then travel over little sensory microscopic outer hair cells that produce an electrical signal subsequently, which is sent to the brain, and we process that as sound. So if those 3 bones become disjointed, so disarticulated, or in some way, another term given to it is ossicular discontinuity, they're no longer connected, that can cause the eardrum just to become very, very flaccid and vibrate because there's no tension with the bones. That lever system is no longer present. There's a bit of wax just left in the anterior recess, but because the eardrum is very thin, we've got to be careful, so I decided to leave it. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Take care, keep well.